Welcome, Nyari Samushonga.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Nyari. I'm really happy to be here today. What he's not mentioning is that Aslam and Martin just have a tendency to not listen to what I say as well, generally. So it extends beyond just whether I get to speak or not. This is actually my second talk at a tech conference. The last one was in South Africa. And at that one, I was dragged on the stage, kicking and screaming by Aslam as well. I'm hoping that I managed to keep my anxiety low enough to show my bubbly personality. Okay. So since I'm probably not known to most of the people in the room, oops. I don't know what's happening here. Okay. I thought I'd start by giving a bit of an intro on who I am and where I'm from. So I was born and raised in Zimbabwe, Harare. That's over here in Southern Africa. And then worked in Zimbabwe as an accountant, chartered accountant by experience, for about 5 years before I relocated to New York City up there. And I spent another 5 years working in finance in New York City, and then about 6 months in Dar es Salaam. So the bulk of my work experience has actually been in financial consulting, in accounting, and so forth. And that was a world of valuing sugarcane, valuing derivatives, valuing telcos and things like that. That was the work that I did, and that was the fixation of my life. I'm really struggling with this clicker. Okay, just do this. I was spending a lot of my time quantifying and valuing impact for businesses. How does a business know that it's been successful? How does a business know that it did what it needed to do? It's interesting work, and it's intellectually challenging. But FOMO meant that I was waiting until someone else had gone and created something, and then my job was to say, is what you created worthwhile? Who used it? Did it help them? Is the world a better place because this thing is here? If not, where are the gaps? So I wanted to shift from spending my time in coming and talking about what other people had done and actually get involved in building. And so that was the trigger that had me move from finance into software. And there was all this talk, tech is the business, you know? I'm sure you've all heard it. And I wanted in. I wanted a seat at that table of technology, of inventing ideas and impacting the world. There's this clip where Steve Jobs talks about the fact that we're all raised to believe that the world is what it is. You're surrounded by your reality and you kind of exist in it. And he makes the point that when you finally realize that a lot of the things that you call reality is actually just a bunch of stuff that other people made, and those other people were probably less smart than you are, your mind shifts and you realize that you can be part of creating reality. You can be part of shaping it, you can influence it, you can affect it. And I think that was kind of the shift in my thinking that drove the movement into tech. If tech is the business, then I want to be part of the business and I want to be part of creating. And so the last 6 years of my life have shifted from figuring out what's the value of the roots of sugarcane, not just the cane, not just the sugar, to being part of tech teams and building solutions. And I work mostly in Johannesburg and in Cape Town in South Africa. The wine in Cape Town is really good. I do manage to get to the office after some drinking, but the wine is good. So then I discovered this in moving into tech, which was supposedly the business, that people in tech talk about business value a lot. Now, you can imagine, given where I'm coming from, and I sit at these tables and tech people are like, business value. It's like vertigo, because what I understand business value to be and what tech people understand business value to be is just chalk and cheese. When tech people talk about business value, they're talking about backlogs, they're talking about prioritizing them, they're talking about estimation, what goes first, how long will it take us, how do we deliver it? But when business people talk about business value, they're talking about winning in a market. And don't just think of winning in a market as a financial concept, but generally, businesses exist to get something done, and they want to win at doing that thing. And so when they talk about value, that's, essentially what they describe. But then when tech people are talking about value and they're in these heated debates in boardrooms, I didn't recognize that concept of value. But imposter that I felt I was, my inclination was to say, well, okay, teach me about business value, because obviously I haven't seen it from this vantage point. So in software, people tend to talk on this side of the spectrum. Effort, right? Measuring the input, something that my sister and I like to call the input model. You're familiar with that? I mean, when you meet with someone and you're like, have you gotten the thing done that you're supposed to do? And instead of telling you simply no, they'll tell you, I woke up early this morning, and then I went for a run, and then I came back, and then I hurt my leg, so I had to hobble to work, and then I sat down, and I took out my laptop, and I was working on my laptop, and then I tried really hard, and I was really committed, and I'm very passionate, and blah, 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 but it's not done. Input-based thinking. You want everybody to focus on how hard you try, how much you care, how much time you spent, but you're not talking about, so what? So at the end of your breaking your leg and hobbling and worrying and fretting, what do they get, what do the rest of us get out of it? So there's an effort side to it. And effort is important because it's part of creation. But in creating, what we're looking for is some kind of an impact. And the context of impact changes. So what people in tech talk about often when they speak of business value, in my experience, is actually what business people will tend to call an expense. Right? It's what it cost us. Now the question is, was that cost worthwhile? Was it the right cost? The right size of cost? Was it a cost spent on the right thing? And so to business, it's about impact. We spent a bunch of money. After we spent a bunch of money, we were trying to educate some children. Do the children know more now that they're done than when they began? So it's not really done, or done, as we say, or done, when you push it to production. It's done, properly in a business value context, when once in production, someone can use it and derive benefit from it. That's business value, right? So measuring somewhere in the middle there, and not on the other end there, is not really business value. That's maybe me value, that's input value, that's cost. We might even go so far as to call it an investment, but it's only a good investment if we get a return. The return is on that side. As we'd say in South Africa, it's Lapa side. It's not here, it's over there. And so this is the conversation, is when business people are saying business value, this is what they're looking for. When business people are investing, they're investing to get to that side. And so, how you know when people are not really talking about business value, but they're using the words, our showcase was amazing, right? And it's important to have, good showcases at the end of your iteration or your sprint or whatever we're calling it. But we're not really done, right? When we're in the showcase. We now know we have something that works that maybe can be useful, but we don't know yet how useful, or if its usefulness is in line with what we expected. The other way I know when tech people are not really talking about business value is when I hear a lot of emphasis on the tech jargon, right? Blockchain. We used blockchain for what? And, and in the beginning, when you join the team and you're not familiar with technological terms and you're feeling a bit like an imposter, you're thinking, oh my God, I should go run off and read about blockchain. And it probably took me a couple of years before I felt confident enough to say, I don't need to know that. I don't need to know that you use blockchain. I need to know that you understood what I needed, and I'm closer to having it because you did something. The fact that it's underlying it is something as powerful as blockchain is not really how we lead conversations. That's like 3, 4, 5 paragraphs into the discussion is when I want to hear about blockchain. Another one is a lot of the agile process jargon, which is why I really enjoyed Shell's talk this morning. Thanks to Spotify, we have a new word for team, which is squad. We spun up 4 squads. I can get you 3 squads tomorrow. Oh, we don't have the capacity, but if we call India, they can spin up 3 squads, and I'm like, what's a squad to do with value, What has it got to do with the price of tea? And so this is the kind of language that you hear not just from build teams, but from tech leadership. And it emphasizes, again, if you look at it, it emphasizes on things that are really input to creating value, but are not yet matured to the point of being value. So we're counting our chicks before they hatch. And then someone might just, take them and scramble them and make some eggs instead. So the difference is that how do you know what are the murmurings, the signs, the smells that business values actually what's being prioritized and not, a joyride for the techies? And these are some of the signs that I found. Businesses exist because they have an aspiration. Well, at least the good businesses. And some of their aspirations you might agree with morally or disagree with, but the point is they exist for an aspiration. An example of such an aspiration is that we want to make financial transacting more inclusive. So in a place like South Africa, we've got a big problem with what we call the unbanked. These are people that don't earn enough money to be participating in the economic system. So they're excluded. You might hear terms like informal sector. That money is under mattresses, it's in all sorts of unsafe ways, and it's all complicated and confusing. And so there's a lot of talk about banking the unbanked, which is about inclusion. Can everybody participate in the economy? That's a business aspiration. And everyone can see how that creates value. You're creating convenience for a lot of people. You're creating traceability for a lot of people. Maybe you can catch terrorists because now you can see where all the money went, So that's what business would have as an aspiration. So business is saying that we want to offer an affordable service that is accessible to a group of people that couldn't access it before. It's accessible because they can afford it, one. It's accessible because it's in a channel that they can use. So maybe they can't travel to a bank or to an ATM. So how can you give them financial transacting capacity where they are? So to business, that's the what they need to do in order to achieve the aspiration. So then the question becomes, well, how will I know that I have succeeded? How will I know that it is valuable? So this is back to my former life when I was trying to figure out, the value of things. How do you measure stuff in general? And so they're saying, if I have an increase in customers that meet this demographic category, for example, and those customers are actually on this platform moving money X number of times within a month, then I know I've succeeded at that aspiration. Or you can use capitalist terms like increased shareholder value, but really that shareholder value comes from these things being achieved. And so when you start to hear sounds like this, and you start to hear tech people concerning themselves with this affair, then you know they're talking about real business value. They're not just talking about arguing with each other. One of the things that really fascinates me is we're going to start a new project. Yeah, we need to talk about business value. How many business value points can we deliver in the next sprint? And then suddenly the first story on the board is login. Oh my God, that's a hella valuable piece of thing to do. I don't know how I lived my life before I had login. In fact, I think I'm going to have a heart attack and die if you take away login. And so there's these weird dissonant messages that come out of technology sometimes where it's like, to business people that sit at that table, are we in the same movie? Are you one's talking about the Matrix and the other one's talking about Titanic? It's really not the same party. And so my conclusion is that tech is not the business. And then this one should blow your mind. The business is the business, right? And if you remember nothing else of what I say today, please take away that the business is the business. And so what does that mean? Business is about supply and demand, if we take it back to very elementary concepts. Now, I'm not going to fall victim to the confirmation bias. I know Linda did tell you that economics is not a thing, and that it's so, last quarter. But, I tend to think that facts are not important in this context. And I'm right because I say so. And so business is about supply and demand. And so let's unpack this. Because the interesting thing with business being about supply and demand, in many ways, it's about demand for things that have existed long before we were all here and will be here long after. And sometimes we fixate ourselves with what's almost a superficial layer of a concept. So let's take an example around mobility and people needing to move around reliably, right? There's different ways you can achieve the goal of moving reliably. You could take a walk, you could call a taxi, you get on a bus, you can take a train, you could call a friend and say, hey, could you pick me up? This is an age-old problem. As long as humans have been around, they've been needing to get around, and they've been needing to do it reliably. But then when we speak about Uber, it's like, oh, they created demand, because all of us were in solitary confinement in our homes until Uber came about, and suddenly, ta-da, we want to go places. But that's not what happened. We all had places to go, and we were trying to get to those places. What Uber did is they locked in on certain aspects that were making the way that demand was met insufficient. So we all had a need for something, and it was being met somewhat, but then they started to solve the concept of that supply in a different way. They democratized the supply side. Suddenly, almost any vehicle that was on the road was a potential opportunity for you to get taken to where you were going. So you had a lot more choice. They gave you visibility of where is the person who's coming to get me. So there's a concept that Dan was actually talking about yesterday, which is TIA. This is Africa. And that's usually an excuse we Africans use when we just don't make things work, right? So an example is in South Africa, if someone says, I'll see you now, or if they say, I'll see you now, or if they say, I'll see you just now, those are three very distinctly different things, okay? So I'll see you now is like, yeah, I'll see you, probably today. I'll see you now is I'm actually starting to concern myself with where are you and how might I get there? I'll see you just now is like, no, like I am dead serious. I'm gonna see you. The choice of word as now is almost just arbitrary. Maybe a more appropriate word is like whenever, right? And so we had this problem with taxis. You call the taxi, and it's like, yeah, I'll come get you. I'm round the corner. They won't tell you which corner. Yeah, but I'm coming to you, right? So I'll see you now, just now. And so now you have visibility. So when you say you're coming to get me, I can see where you are, and I can see if that time makes sense for me, right? And I can know how much it's gonna cost me. I don't just get to the end of the ride and suddenly, boom, you want my kidney or something, So this is what they did. They went into a pre-existing demand that we've always had and figured out ways to give you better control, better visibility, in some cases a sense of safety around how that demand gets met. That's what they did. And that's in many ways revolutionary. And underlying that is a lot of brilliant technology, don't get me wrong. But that's the value, right? The value is actually sitting in there. It's not, you can't call the map a value. The value is actually now we've got this network and this platform that makes moving around something you can do with a lot less friction to get a much better experience. And they're not alone in this. I was actually in the US at the time when Netflix revolutionized entertainment by allowing you to just pay a monthly subscription and go and pick up your DVDs from your mailbox. So suddenly, desiring access to entertainment didn't require you to physically go to a particular brick and mortar store with a limited catalog in that building and then find out what's available here and then pick it up. Suddenly I could sit in my home, decide what's available on that catalog, and then anyone who had a mailbox could now be accessing the DVDs. I had a higher level of awareness of what are my choices. It wasn't like, oh, I really want to go watch that particular movie, and then I get there, and then, as we'd say in South Africa, dololo, there's nothing, right? So that was one thing that they did. And then other players in the market wise up to it, and they start to do that as well. So then the next thing they do is they want to watch movies anywhere, anytime. So it's not just at my house that I want you to send the DVD. I'm sitting in the airport, and I'm stuck with a 2-hour layover. And I still want to watch, right? I still want some entertainment. I still want some mechanism to relax. And so by allowing streaming, they improve the access to that entertainment, right? And then you move past that, and then you say, well, make the catalog of movies, of series that I can watch bigger, and they get more people on the platform. And so the value to the consumer of that is more and more. Because when you think about it, Netflix isn't just competing with Blockbuster at a given point in time. They're competing with the movie theater. They're competing with you going to the park to play with your dog. They're competing with you having a chat, falling asleep, having some wine. There's a range of things you could be doing that are not necessarily watching a movie provided by Netflix. And so by increasing this convenience, where, how, what, they make it more valuable for you to engage their product than what it was before. And then they say, well, in fact, we know so much about you and what you watch, how about we create our own content? And now they've actually gone off and won Roma, won an Oscar, which is Netflix. And if you like, go all the way back to 1997, shipping out DVDs, to now winning an Oscar from original content that they're creating, you see that transformation. But again, the demand for entertainment, the demand to relax, the demand to unwind, this is something that has always been there. Winning for Netflix is being able to contest for that demand, for that mind share, for that wallet share, as we would say in finance, right? And essentially become a dominant part of that in our lives. And now you've got the concept of Netflix and chill, which is another fancy word for couch potato. Well done, Netflix. So essentially, we're seeing which parts are transformative and which parts are valuable. And notice how, for all the crazy, wonderful tech that you've got in Netflix, we can have a conversation about value. And I haven't used a single tech word. I have not said API. I have not said login. And yet we're talking about value. We're concerning ourselves with things that are actually useful and accessible to humans, because like we found out earlier today, software developers are humans, And so I think Kevin did me a solid by, getting you guys aware of that and familiar with it so that you're not like throwing arrows at me. I didn't have to break that news, so my life is a little bit easier. And so there are a lot of other examples of this. There's Amazon and how they've revolutionized the marketplace, right? And in Africa, we've got these big open markets where you go and they are chaotic with humans and goods, and it's just mayhem. So the concept of the marketplace has been there, right? And if you consider all the things that you could buy on Amazon, and you just basically literally have them as physical things in front of you, that's the same visual as an African market, right? You could be in Lagos. And so essentially, again, not a new concept of supply and demand, not a new concept of what is value, but in that delivery, there's a convenience that's being brought to you. It's being brought to the people that have wares to sell. It's being brought to the people that are buying them. And so we start to understand value as it's actually a pretty accessible thing. Anyone paying attention can quickly know if something is valuable or not. And so some of these pitched debates about value start to look a little bit crazy, right? When you're like, well, probably the reason why we are arguing is because we're not even talking about value at all. As someone I know would say, it's just semantics, yeah? So what is common to impactful technology is that the disruptors have a deep understanding of the entire value chain. The value chain of what people need, and the value chain of what can be delivered, and everything in between. Where's the friction? What makes it useful? What can it be used for in this context and in another context? They actually understand the value chain. And then they also understand the capabilities of technology. Because for a lot of the people that talk about blockchain, scary things I've heard. And then I'm not even going to start the conversation about microservices today. I have seen pictures. I'm going to try and censor myself because I'm in the company of the actual technologists, but the diagrams you folks draw and call microservices, bless your hearts. You do some scary things, right? And so you show up with these things you don't understand and try to convince business people you're going to solve their problems that you don't understand, and somehow you want to get paid for it. That's criminal. Somebody call the police. So you've got to know how to build a tapestry. you've got to weave in what is valuable to humans among whom you are counted a part, and weave that in with the superpower that is technology. That's the ask. And it's a difficult ask. But that's what you need to step up to. That's how you earn the right to get out of bed in the morning, shower, and show up at work. Don't just take up space and oxygen, you know. So business gives technology purpose, right? And a seat at the table must be used to build the business right. Because if necessity is the mother of invention, necessity has invented business, and business in itself has had needs that have invented technology. And so when technology tries to take itself away from that sphere and exist, you know, on one of those rich people islands in the middle of the ocean where they live by themselves, then it just becomes like a lot of craziness, right? You need to orient it within the context from which it was birthed for it to have any value or any relevance in the world. And that's really what we're looking for. So there's two sets of knowledge on my axis here. Yes, Kevlin, by using this model, I have excluded many, many, many things, most of them because I don't understand. But for now, this is our world. There's business knowledge and there's technical knowledge. And you've got expert practitioners in each of those. And those are those two extremes. And then you've got a level where you have a good understanding, right? It's like, I kind of get that it's there. And then you've got a basic awareness, which is, yeah, you know it's a thing, but you have no idea what's inside that thing, right? And so we've got tech specialists, and we need them. And they're worried about performance, they're worried about security, they're worried about, you know, all these clever, intelligent things I don't understand. And then over here, you've got business people, and they're worried about strategy. You know, how do we go to market? Economics, which is not a thing. But unlike Kevlin and Aslam and all these other guys, I can't change my slides in flight, because then I will like immediately, spontaneously combust, and then I won't be able to do the talk. And so I figured business value was if I live long enough to actually come on the stage and share something. And so I made an executive decision to keep economics in. And so you've got business specialists that are concerned with the economy of things. They're concerned with the policy of things. They're concerned with the strategy of things. They're concerned with competition. And so what we're really looking for is not everybody is going to be, like Martin calls me, a black unicorn up in the corner. Some people are going to be expert at one, but we need your understanding to lift, right? So if you're an expert at technology, can your business understanding lift to, I'm thinking, maybe a millimeter above zero? You know, just off the ground. And similarly, if you're an expert in business, it's really not good enough to show up and be like, I have no idea what tech is, you know, and I'm just gonna throw a requirement over a wall, and can y'all make some magic for me on that side? What we're really looking for is a table that has people who have some intersectionality to them, where you at least have a good understanding of the other side of the world and an expert understanding in your own space, right? And, you know, if we can have some unicorns in the world, you know, why not? So, on the one hand, technical people spend a lot of time worrying about how to build software right. And there's a lot of great minds working on this. You've got people like Kent Beck, Martin Fowler, Linda, a lot of people. Some of them were on the stage today, and they're concerned with how to build tech right. And so don't get me wrong, I'm not saying throw out all your tools and build stupid things that don't work. That doesn't help anybody. But there's another world, introducing the programmers to business knowledge, right? And in this context, you've got people like Michael Porter talking about competition, Clay Christensen, and he does some interesting things on innovation and actually understanding the concept of demand. What problem are people trying to solve? Peter Senge does some interesting things on the fifth discipline, creating learning organizations, systems thinking, and there are many others. And so for people who operate within the business space, they are largely preoccupied with the questions that, you know, these thinkers have put forward. And we're looking for a world that can intersect both to earn your seat at the table. So you need to understand the nature of competition, right? So who is Uber competing with? If they don't answer that question, they can't really be effective. What problem are they trying to solve? For whom? Who else is solving that problem? How do I solve it better? How do I beat my own best, right? These are the things that people need to be concerned with, and these are the conversations that are needed in building the right software. So we need to build the right things, and we need to build those right things in the right way. And so I've got 4 things for you to remember, but if you can't remember all 4, just remember you're humans. And login is not business value. Tech is not the strategy. We are going to have digital transformation is not a business strategy, right? It's a tool, it's an important tool, it's a powerful tool, but that can't be the strategy. An organization cannot exist to have digital transformation and agile transformation and, you know, Scrum and stickies and lots of stickies and more stickies. An organization does not exist for Kanban. It has to have a purpose and a direction. And it has to attempt to digitize to honor that purpose and that direction, because that's valuable, right? One of the things that I often talk about, because before I was in tech, I lived in spreadsheets, big, big, big spreadsheets. And numbers are my friends. I much prefer them to people. I understand them better most of the time. They're a lot friendlier to me. But I lived in these really big Excel spreadsheets. And so when I first started working in tech, I realized that anytime I never met a problem, the answer to which was not a spreadsheet, right? And people often say that, you know, when you're building in tech, you should make the process effective and then we automate it because we don't want to automate crap. If you give that philosophy to me, I will automate the spreadsheet. I'll make macros. But in reality, what we're talking about here is that when you understand the problem, there are things that technology can do that humans can't. If you take an example of a branch, for example, if a person walks into a bank and they're being helped by a teller, that person is a single individual and they have to do things sequentially. And so they will set up a beautiful, seamless, optimized manual process that does everything one after the other. That thinking of the smooth process digitized doesn't take advantage of the fact that now a computer can do those things concurrently. There's async. There's all these things that become available that actually break apart the mental model of a manual process, right? And so what you're trying to do here is you're trying to understand the business deeply so that you digitize the solution, not the past practice, not the blockchain, using microservices with APIs. We're actually trying to solve some real life problems, right? So build the correct things for the correct reason. It seems simple enough. When I was writing exams in high school, my mother had great advice for me, always write correct things and you will pass, my child. It's sage advice. I've turned out okay. Every superpower can be powerful, but it can also hurt, right? So for every technology decision you make to solve one problem, my friend Aslam always says, today's solutions are tomorrow's problems. All the problems you have today are because of all the decisions you made yesterday. And that's okay, right? It's absolutely okay. But you need to be aware when you're making the decision what you're trading off. When I think of it, another way to describe it is don't be a single issue voter. You can't vote for a politician because you have this super passionate concern about the park down the street, and this guy said he likes that park, and he's gonna water the grass more, and it's gonna get greener, so you vote for him. Because when you vote for that person, touch and go that the grass will actually be green in that park, but guess what? Everything else they believe, that's your problem now. You assume it holistically. Your decisions are all or nothing. When you say yes to it all. So when you say, yes, I would love to spend some time in Malmö, you will end up on a stage and you will have to speak. And I'm learning. I'm trying to take my own advice. But essentially, when you make a decision to introduce something into the architecture, you essentially inherit all the constraints of that technical tool that you have taken on. And this is where the tail starts to wag the dog, where tech people run off and they make technical decisions, and then after they've made technical decisions, business people come back and they say, now we want to adapt. And then tech says, no, we cannot, we will not. In fact, no, because our stack doesn't do that, right? And we need to start to look at this and say, well, what am I inheriting? What superpower am I buying? But what am I trading off? And to the point that was made earlier, with these trade-offs, am I okay with them? Rock and a hard place trade-off. Don't just buy shiny things, you know? Realize that when you buy these shiny things, you gotta keep them at home and clean them. So don't build solutions with things you don't understand. Understand the technology you're taking on, understand what it does, and also understand what it doesn't do, and what it prevents you from doing because you've chosen it. Leverage legacy. This is another fascinating one in terms of the semantics of the thing. When you come from finance, legacy is a good thing. It's a very good thing. It's that money you got that you didn't work for. That's a good thing. It's the head start. It's the value and the richness of everything that came before you. And then you meet tech people, and then they say, legacy, always. And it blew my mind. Upside down, like completely, what? You don't want legacy? Who doesn't want a trust fund? Legacy is a good thing. It's the source of all value, and yes, it creates a lot of problems. Don't get me wrong, and I know I'm over-trivializing it because I've also encountered some hectic legacy. But this baby out with the bathwater thing, I mean, depending on whether it's a nice baby or not, I mean, there are some babies that maybe you do want to throw out. Don't quote me. But, oh no, they recorded it. Martin! So, legacy is something you need to leverage. And especially when you look at speaking to business people, a lot of what is making these businesses powerful is the experiences and the knowledge that they carry. They come with an existing customer. You can't just create your own purple rabbit customer that does the things you like and force them to eat the product you made, right? That is the legacy of the business, and it's relevant, and it's, you know, it's your problem to solve. You bought that puppy, walk that puppy. You don't just get to wake up and say, I don't like pets anymore, I'm a cat person, you know, and ignore the puppy, you know. And that metaphor is begging me to stop, which I will do. But the point I'm trying to make is, have the sense to understand and delve into legacy so that you can know what value it has. Yes, it has its limitations and its problems that you need to manage, but do that with some pragmatism and some awareness, right? It's not just legacy out. Blockchain, microservices, with login. So legacy can give you a head start. And being mature and smart about understanding it, even in the ways it constrained you, if all it tells you is, how do I make sure I never end up here again? I don't know anyone who doesn't think that that's valuable. I mean, maybe it's just I make so many life mistakes at like 1,000 a minute. And so I need the value of knowing that was a bad idea. If that's all you learn from legacy, learn that, but at least be learning. And then finally, egos don't disrupt markets. You don't get to sit at the table so that you can kick everybody else off the table and pay, you know, I don't know if you watch Game of Thrones, and now you're Joffrey. That's not helpful. That is not why we have tech innovation and breakthrough, so that you can kick everybody out and then you can have your solo party. That's not the goal, right? What we're trying to do is build platforms that democratize access, democratize supply, democratize demand. Everybody gets to come in. So don't be building thrones to sit on. That's never a good idea. What you should be looking at is, how do I come into a room that has people that were sitting at a table, and how do I become a part of that? That has been my journey in coming into technology and feeling like an imposter, is how do I sit here and learn enough about the things that are going on around me and be vulnerable enough to be uncomfortable with my ignorance and face it, so that once I understand enough, I can be a worthwhile contributor. For me to walk into a room and, you know, bring out all the letters that come after my name because I wasted a lot of time studying a lot of weird things is not useful. What's useful is for me to sit down and start to understand technology in a way that my colleagues can feel like they're on a team that's better because there's someone who comes here with a perspective that's different. I have a responsibility to continue to sharpen my understanding of business so that I can contribute to the team. But I also feel like programmers have a responsibility to come to that table trying to reach across to me. Because in building that bridge is where the success is. Else maybe let's not have tables, let's just order in some food and watch some Netflix and leverage their value and no more squads. So the verdict is in. Software has done some fantastic things. It's done these things in education, it's done these things in health, it's done them in business, in safety, in security, in so many things. And technologists have earned the reputation for building transformative things. And I think we'll continue to earn that. Make it count when you're at the table. Be a part of the solution, not a part of the jargon problem. Not a part of building things because you like them, and then we end up stuck with them because we couldn't build better things for ourselves. Take the time to actually understand the concept and the aspiration of who you're trying to serve, and be part of teams that build beautiful, useful things. So it's about making an impact as a collective. And so step up to the table. I'm not saying be shy about what you're great at, own your own goodness, but then also respect and appreciate that the world is bigger than ones and zeros. Thank you.